Chapter 1, The Science of Nutrition, Screencast 5. This is the last screencast for Chapter 5, and it's going to focus primarily on the scientific method. Now, this particular diagram here is basically showing the steps that this textbook and authors are considering as the scientific method. So let's kind of go through them really quickly. So the first is observation made and questions asked. Then there's going to hypothesis generation, then research experiments conducted, findings evaluated by other scientists and published, follow-up experiments conducted to confirm or extend the findings, accept or reject the hypothesis. So that's generally how this textbook is approaching the scientific method. And the example that they're giving here is in the 1980s, physicians note that a short-term experiment, people eating a low-calorie, high-protein diet that lost weight more quickly than people eating a low-calorie, high-carbohydrate diet. So this became known as the Atkins diet, South Beach diet, and all of those other types of diets that kind of fell into that zone for the most part. Okay, and then so the hypothesis was generated that these particular calories would result in more weight loss over time than the traditional low-calorie, high-carbohydrate diet. Research experiments were conducted to assess these findings. They were evaluated by other scientists. And then follow-up kind of started to indicate that on a short-term basis, this seemed to be the case, but on long-term basis, it appeared that the weight came back relatively quickly. So at this point, there's other studies here thinking that there has to be further research, but the current research kind of decides that that hypothesis is not correct. So solid example, and also of the whole process that we're looking at going through the scientific method. Now, especially in physiology, laboratory animals are used because, quite honestly, we can't always use humans to do our research on. And the use of laboratory animal experiments depend upon the availability of an animal model. And what that really means is that animal model has a particular condition comparable to something that you might see in a human. A really good example is a strain of rat known as the Zucker rat. These rats are basically bred to be diabetic and obese. So they're quite often used to test drugs related to type 2 diabetes and other things like that. So really, really good example of that there. Now, we are currently probably approaching a relatively controversial topic right now because just recently the CDC told states that to prepare for the shipment of large quantities of coronavirus vaccine, November 1st. If we look at the literature, if we look at the science data right now, the data that's out there says this is fairly skeptical because it has not been completely tested yet. There's not enough information. And unfortunately, there is some potential that pushing out a vaccine by that time frame is actually trying to politicize the vaccine. And that's something that should not be doing. Now, human experiments must be approved by an institutional review board. And what this review board does, it actually assesses the risks and benefits of participation in a particular study. It also requires and makes sure that the researchers inform the participants of the following. What is the purpose of the study? What are the procedures? And what will be the known benefits and risks from participation in this particular study? Now, there's also a large number of different types of designs that are used. There's migrant studies, cohort studies, case control, and double-blind studies. We'll go into a few of these just to kind of give you an idea of the different types of design that are out there. Case control study. Now, individuals who have the condition are compared to those that do not. So generally what we look at here, you cannot get cause and effect. That's really important. And the strongest studies are going to look at groups that are similar in age, race, and gender. But the key thing that you will not get out of this particular study there is no cause and effect. Potentially a relationship will be found, but you can't get to that causal statement based on a case control study. Now, the gold standard is considered double blind. Now, this actually is a much more rigorous type of study. The experimental group will follow a particular protocol. The control group does not. Generally, they will be receiving a placebo if we're talking about a drug trial. And one of the things that makes this such a strong design is not only do the participants in the project not know what group they're in, the researchers don't either. So breaking down into the experimental versus control group was actually assigned by someone other than the primary investigator. And also, these individuals are not kind of given any idea of what to expect out of the particular protocol. And sometimes you might just only be able to do a single blind, but the goal quite often is to get an experiment following this particular type of design, the double blind study. Now, after that, scientists will actually have to have their work reviewed prior to publication. Typically, this is going to be through the process of peer-reviewed journals. Now, there are a number of journals in nutritional science or journals that actually report nutritional topics. For example, peer-reviewed journals related to nutrition are the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, the New England Journal of Medicine, and the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics Journal. One of the things that I have tried to include in our homework is you'll actually be reading journal articles related to some of the topics that we will be studying this semester. Now, next are follow-up studies. So one experiment is not enough to accept a hypothesis. The results must be confirmed by multiple experiments. The more evidence that eventually ends up supporting a hypothesis, the more likely it is to accept that particular hypothesis. Now, another concept is systematic reviews. And what this is a critical evaluation and synthesis of research studies focusing on a specific topic or research question. Now, this is used to help determine which clinical methods are likely to help patients. There are a number of organizations that are responsible for these systematic reviews. Evidence Analysis Library, USDA Nutrition Evidence Library, the E-Library of Evidence for Nutrition Actions, and the Cochrane Collaboration. So these are some organizations that conduct systematic reviews. Now, here is a potential hypothesis, basically that obesity leads to the development of type 2 diabetes. And notice what's funneling in. There's evidence from all the study designs that are out there. So there's case control studies, lab animal studies, human studies, epidemiological studies, and observations. So all of these seem to add to what we know and confirm the hypothesis that obesity will lead to type 2 diabetes. Now, if I had to pick one of the most controversial areas in which there is a lot of bad information out there, I'm going to go with nutrition as one of them. The other would be exercise. So on the internet in particular, there is a lot of bad information out there. There is no real anything in place that's out there to validate what people have said. So it's really important. And in nutrition science, they actually have a term that they use called quackery to talk about these things that don't make a lot of sense. Now, one of the things that's really important is understanding and developing skills to identify what might be questionable work, a questionable article, or questionable research. So these are some things to be on the lookout for. They only talk about advantages. They use the term new or secret, a claim that says that this particular regimen will cure a disease. Probably one of the best is sounds too good to be true. Many of them have great bias against medical community, and this is something that we're starting to see more of. A perfect example of this is anything having to do with the anti-vaccine movement. Also, some individuals or anecdotal data that are testimonials that show dramatic results. So those are things to kind of keep in mind and be on the lookout if those claims are being made. Now, if you're looking at some of the things that are important behind research claims, size of the study, okay, how many subjects were involved, how long did this study actually investigate or work with the subjects, and also what type of study was the design. So these are things that are really important in evaluating nutritional claims and also the research that's out there. Now, the next couple of slides are talking about purchasing nutrition-related products, mostly supplements. Supplements are not tightly regulated. So back in 1994, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act classified vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and herbal remedies as foods. Now, restrained the U.S. Food and Drug Administration from rigorous regulation. But now, the FDA must now prove these products are unsafe to prevent sale. So not as highly regulated. Things that need to be done is scrutinizing nutrition-related product labels, make sure that there is legitimate scientific proof supporting the claims for these supplemental agents. Do not use products in which the purpose is not stated on the label. Now, these labels, according to this act, can claim the following: general well-being results, how the product provides benefit, and how it will affect bodily structure or function. So once again, this is specific to supplements and things of that nature. Here is a supplemental fact label, and so this is what typically has to be on. And so most of the things that we talked about are on there. But look at the statement on the very bottom. This statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. So that is a very important statement. And here they're basically talking about ginseng.